Well, hello everyone. Sorry about the delay. Um, my food was extra late, so I literally guzzled it down, trying to. I had to extend the start time like 10 minutes because of that, so I apologize for the delay. But gosh, what an eventful couple of days, let me tell you. Um, First, my flight gets delayed, which leads to me having to cancel it entirely. Um, which leads to me flying out this morning and missing the first 3 hours of the trial. Um, it just went, one thing was going wrong after another. Finally, we got everything fixed up. I am here in San Francisco, California, Salinas now. Drove down here after my flight, and I got in after lunch, so it was like almost perfectly timed. I got a chance to see the large portion of the defense's closing argument, which again just seemed very disjointed. I mean, as I walk in again, I'm hoping, in my defense cases where I'm the defense, I try to paint a picture and tell a story in in my openings. Uh, thank you, Michelle. I try to, because humans are naturally drawn to storytelling, and by having, like, if you remember, the defense is closing. I mean, they went on so many tangents in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. They went on so many tangents that, I mean, it absolutely made my head spin. I remember sitting there with Nick and Free Book and one other lawyer, and the four of us. Oh, I think it was Legal Vices. Yeah, it was Legal Vices. It was me, Ricada, Legal Vices, and Free Book. And we're all sitting there, literally in one voice, going, "What the hell are they talking about?" Because they went off on like tangents of what happened here at this thing and at this location. I'm like, just tell a story. When you try to poke holes, it's not effective. People don't. People respond with emotion. They don't respond with logic. Um, and the defense did a poor job of responding, getting the jury to respond with emotion today. The prosecution did a fantastic job, um, which we'll get to in a moment. But uh, I mean, the trial has only just begun. Today is the first day. The jury has been selected. There are 40 of them now. Thank God, not all 40 are going to be in the courtroom at one time. We're going to have 20 and 20, and they're going to alternate. So what happened this morning is, um, the 20 that were listening to the openings for Paul, the son, went first. So the prosecution opened. This is what I missed. Prosecution opened. The defense opened. I got the second half of that. And then then they left, and they were literally told, like, see you tomorrow. It was like 2:30 or something. I remember everybody in the media room were like, we're getting kicked out of the room, and we're like, wait, there's more. And the bailiff was like, yeah, don't worry, we'll bring you back when the father's case begins, Rubens. And they brought us back, and the prosecution started all over again, opening for the father. Now, I was told, or I overheard, I should say, that essentially the prosecution's opening was pretty much the same in both the father and son's cases. I mean, and it makes sense, right? Because the father had a tangential role of allegedly covering up, helping hide the body, and then later dispose of it, and so on. Whereas the son had the active role. He's the one who killed her, allegedly, right? So think of it this way. The prosecutor, again, has to tell a story. And if he tells the father's story, it's just going to be short and sweet. And he doesn't want that. He doesn't want a short and sweet story. He wants the full tale of what happened. So the jury gets the story from Ruben's side. Now, I don't know what's going to start happening with testimony. Are they going to bring all 40 of them? Well, now 39 left for sure, because I heard how one of the alternates was replacing one of the jurors that was on the father's panel. So we lost one juror there, and an alternate was put in their place. And it's just day one. We still have somewhere between 90 and 120 of those to go. And it's quite an experience to be sitting on another trial. I kind of missed it. I got glimpses of the jury. I don't get a chance to see them whole. I need to be inside the courtroom on the second floor for that. I was on the courtroom on the third floor, the overflow media room. And let's talk about the facts, okay? Let me tell you a story, just like I promised in the title, right? So I've never seen a deputy, by the way, wearing blue jeans in my life. They're always wearing their full uniform, the Browns. This is the first time I've seen um, a deputy wearing blue jeans. Okay, so here's the story. All right, I'm not going to use my notes. I'm going to go from memory as best I can. This is what happened, okay? According to the prosecution's opening statement, here's what happened. Kristin was at a party. Some allegation, I think somebody in the comments said that it's a frat party, maybe. I don't know if the prosecutor mentioned that or not, but it was a party. Enough said. And they arrived at that party around like 10:30 p.m. when Kristin was seen with Paul, and she was completely sober. Now, about 2 hours later, she was seen completely sloshed. Just uncharacteristic, especially, being a female, drinking, just didn't seem right why she was so sloshed. I mean, she was sloshed, as the prosecutor even pointed, like she was hanging like off of Paul as he was basically borderline, dragging her on his shoulders to wherever he was going. So on his way from the frat party, they're walking towards the dorms, and they run into somebody named Tim. I forgot his last name. I really wasn't capitalizing on the names too much because I didn't know which names were important, which names were not, because there were a lot of names being thrown around. So it's kind of hard to keep up except the main ones. But I believe they run into a Tim, and he's like, "Hey, let me help you. Like, she seems to be completely drunk. Like, she's probably heavy. Let me help you out." And he's like, "All right, okay, sure." And then they go for a little bit, and it's a long walk. It's a long walk, like 400 yards or something. And you're basically dragging this person on your shoulders. So eventually, as they get closer to the dorms, Paul basically goes, "All right, man, all right, I got it from here. Don't worry about it. I'll take it from here." Okay, he says, "All right." And they run into another individual, a female, and again, same thing. Like, "Hey, let me help you out. Let me." She's like, "No, no, 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 no. I got it." Paul says, "I got it. Don't worry." Now, an interesting fact that the prosecutor brought out is that both individuals that approached them, neither one did Paul ask, "Hey, Do you guys know where this girl, let's say he didn't know her name because he later alleges that he didn't know her name. Do you know where she lives? Like, so I can drop her off or whatever. Like, do you know where she lives? He never asked that. And he took her to his dorm. She was wearing a gray short sleeve shirt and black shorts that night. And that was the last outfit she was seen in because she was gone the next day. That was the last night anyone has ever seen her. So that was, I guess, Friday, right? Now, Paul's roommate, this is important. Paul's roommate was away for 3 days, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Paul had time, this is the prosecution's argument, to do whatever he needed to do. So he did make one phone call, and that phone call was to Reuben, his father. And the next time he was seen was like that Saturday night he went to the movies. And then Sunday when his roommate comes back, there's no trace of Kristin. So back at the dorm, Crystal, who is Kristin's roommate, Crystal says that when she came back, she was not, I think she was at her boyfriend's house that night. And then when she came to the dorm the next morning, she found all of Kristin's stuff still in her dorm, like her hairbrush, her makeup, and all of that stuff. The prosecution argued Crystal will testify to the fact that Kristin would have never left the dorm without taking her stuff with her. So it seemed like an unplanned trip, right? And I mean, the rest is history. A few days later, I don't know the exact timeline here, but there's a trailer that gets pulled up to the house to the exact spot where her body was allegedly buried. So I understand that her body was in that spot for a while. It was under the deck of Reuben Flores' house, the father's house. And one day they brought in this trailer to, I guess, transport the body, but it was tested. And they couldn't find her DNA. They found the DNA of the trailer's owner. They found the DNA of Reuben and Paul, but they could not find any DNA of Kristin. They did many, many years later. They had cadaver dogs, do sniff searches, and they alerted to the mattress in Paul's bedroom. Several dogs, independent of one another. And one time they even removed the mattress, and the dogs sniffed that same area and alerted to the same bed frame in the corner where the mattress that the previous dogs alluded to. So I don't know. Maybe it's the lighting in here. So some of the biggest arguments, I think, for the prosecution that emotionally how they try to drag the jury into this is they're going for this. Again, they're going for the heart. They're going for the emotion. They're not going for logic. Is that guilty conscience? Several times during his opening, I'll give you the key ones. There was a phone call that the police recorded from 2019 where Susan Flores is talking to, I think, one of the lawyers, and she says something along the lines of, let me give you the exact quote, "I need you to start listening to the podcast so we can punch holes in it. Wherever we can punch holes in it, basically, we need to get that done." People who are innocent don't talk like that. People who are innocent, talk like, we need to get to the truth. We need to make sure the truth is heard, and my son who is innocent will be found not guilty or innocent, whatever. People who are don't have a consciousness of guilt don't talk like that. So either very poor choice of words, but it also, again, a lot of these cases, especially cold cases, cold old cases, um, have a lot of circumstantial evidence embedded. And the problem with these cases, when you don't have a body, you don't have a murder weapon, the prosecution has to throw as much as it can. And it's actually it's working, in my opinion. Now, I think the defense's best argument here, by the way, let me just jump to that real quick, is to argue beyond a reasonable doubt. You need, as a defense lawyer, you need to argue beyond a reasonable doubt because there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence going on here. The defense has to, absolutely must, when this case is over at the close, to argue that it's fantastic that we have all this evidence and it all seems to point in the right direction and it looks like they're guilty because there's just all these, the the one thing I haven't talked about yet, the radio imaging that they use, the infrared imaging, to show that there's an anomaly in the ground, and then they dug it up and there are like stains on the mud, and it looks like it's human fluids that have leaked on, of a decomposing body, and the ground has been disturbed in that area, and there's stains on the concrete that is consistent with a body, and they're going to bring in the original architect of the house to show that before they built the house, there's an inspection that's been done of the soil and the ground, and there were no bodies found anywhere around because he would have lost his license if he had found a body and not reported it. So this body must have been there after the house was built and not before. That's another fact. The fact that the father was so overprotective of that piece of deck that one day a plumber showed up, and the plumber was asking to go to inspect a portion of the house that was related to the deck where the alleged body was buried, and the father was very protective. He said, "No, thou shalt not pass. You are not going to go inspect that area." He was extremely protective of it. So all these facts, they circumstantially build a case. The judge made a great analogy in her instructions to the jury. She said, there are two ways to find someone that could have potentially been swimming in the pool. You could come to the pool and there they are in the water, and you're like, oh, they're swimming in the pool. Or there's something called circumstantial evidence, where you arrive and there's a person wearing swim trunks and their head is wet and their hair is wet and their body is wet and their hands are wet and their feet are wet, but they're not in the pool. And you can imply, by circumstantial evidence, by implication, by deductive reasoning, that they have been swimming, right? Because they're standing next to the pool and they're wet. So that's basically how the prosecution hopes to win this case. We don't have a body, we don't have a murder weapon, but we have so much around it that like implicates guilt that you should find them guilty. And it's a very, very easy case if you don't have the right defense, or it's a very, very hard case if you've got the right defense. And so far, I've only heard from one of the lawyers. I'm not impressed. He seems a little aloof, not very emotionally intelligent, kind of distant, doesn't really. He's older. In his defense, he's definitely older. He's like in his 70s. He's up there. He's up there. So I can't fault him. He may be a brilliant legal mind, but I don't know. I don't know anything about him. I can just tell from what I've seen so far. And the prosecution, like I said in my tweet, he's like a Harvey Specter. He's just like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Like, I'm in, I'm out. Listen to this. This is what I have. And he appears so confident. He's like, chop, 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 chop. He's like breaking it all down for the jury. It's kind of amazing actually to watch, and he's very captivating. And again, this case can be purely won on emotion. Um, the second defense attorney, I think it's a different one. I'm like 99.9% sure it's a different one. Um, he did not do his opening immediately after the prosecution did theirs. That is a catastrophic mistake. Cata-fucking-strophic. Why? Because the jury got to hear, the second jury, they got to hear the entire opening of the prosecution. It is seeping in, neural connections are being made in their minds right now. And they're going to go to bed and they're going to sleep on it. And they may even dream about it. So when they wake up, those neural connections are like, imagine it's like pouring concrete. And the prosecution was like pouring concrete, right? And it's still wet. You can still put your handprint in it, like maybe create reasonable doubt, show that there is reasonable doubt. But by the next morning, you come over there, good luck trying to put anything in that cement. It's hard. You're not going to be able to change it. It already solidified, right? What are you going to do? Pour acid over it? Unless you've got acid in the form of argument, of course. I'm alluding to the defense attorney. By all means, I can't wait. But unless you've got something golden, and I hope for his sake and his client's sake that they do, that, I'm trying to remain as unbiased as I possibly can here, of course, at the outset, because I don't know any of the evidence. All I've heard so far are a couple of openings of what the evidence is going to show, which I think, again, is the most important part of the trial, because you're essentially setting the stage for what it's going to be. But the catastrophic mistake that the defense attorney made is he didn't do his opening immediately after the prosecutions. And that is it's possible that it's going to bite him in the ass later. I think he underestimates the power of the human mind. And I've been down that path, and I know what it can do to people when they are convinced of a certain fact or argument or series of arguments or convictions, and then you're trying to change it the day after it all, and they're like, that doesn't add up to what I already believe. Like, I already have a formed, firm belief about this fact, and it's just not it's just not going to bode well, I think. The prosecution has impressed me so far. The defense has not. We'll see tomorrow morning if the second part of their defense is going to impress me. That is why I tweeted what I tweeted. I said that I think, based on what I've heard today, assuming the prosecution can prove their case, I'm sorry, not prove their case, but can put on all those witnesses that they said that they can put on that will testify to all those things, that the prosecution will win. The best way for the defense to win is to not poke holes, is to not argue, this and that. You need to harp on reasonable doubt. When the case is closed and you're doing your closing argument, the words reasonable doubt need to come out of the defense's mouth at least 157 times with an explanation of why and why the prosecution doesn't have it, because they need to bring it back in the prosecution. They need to prove that a murder, or whatever the charges are, I understand that they're murder, has occurred, and they haven't proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. You have doubt, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and here's why. Here's doubt number one, number two, number three. If I were them, I would come up with a list of 157 doubts and list them one by one by one by one. That's what I would do if I were the defense. I hope they're listening to this, because that is the only way you're going to win this case. The prosecution, the only way you can win this case is to continue harping on emotion, because your facts are tangential and weak. They're circumstantial at best. Your biggest takeaways are, Oh, the statement of the father, I forgot to mention. There's an interview I guess he was doing, and they love he slipped up. He did it like two or three times. The prosecutor, um, he slipped up, right? He was saying during some interview, Ruben Flores, the father, was going, "Well, Susan and Mike are getting DNA tested. Well, they didn't commit a felony. Only me. I'm the only one charged with it." That's what he said allegedly, and I guess they're going to play that at some point or whatever. They didn't play it in the opening, but it implies that he accidentally slipped up, and said, I did something wrong. That was actually the last thing that the prosecutor said before he finished his opening. So a lot of it is, again, like I said, circumstantial, and the best way for the prosecution to win is to show that there is just so much evidence. They just got away with it. They just got away with it, and don't let them get away with it now. They got away with it then. Don't let them get away with it now, because look at what we have. We have this mountain of evidence. The only thing we're missing is a body. Well, just because they committed the perfect crime does not mean they get a chance to get away with it. That would be like my closing. That would be like my theme in my closing argument. So, and back to the defense again, if you can show that it's fantastic, you have this mountain, but within this mountain there are scores of reasonable doubt, and time is a factor. Exactly. That's another thing, Rhonda. Thank you for that. You must acquit. If there's too much reasonable doubt, you must acquit. So, yeah, that's I'm very, very glad that I came here. This is definitely an experience. I will be continuing this tomorrow, and I'll be going. Hopefully, we'll be able to get into the actual courtroom, lay eyes on that jury, and report back impressions of the jury. Because during opening, I mean, jury reactions during opening are okay. They're not very useful because they just get to hear the story. I know what their reaction is going to be like without looking at them. But it's during testimony that I can't predict what they're going to look like. And so during the testimony, if it begins tomorrow, it should. No, her remains were never found. That's what I'm saying. That's why they were so hesitant to bring charges, and that's why it took so long, because they never found the body. They don't know where the body is. Nobody ever confessed to it. Nobody ever said where it was. Nobody ever found her. Nothing. I tried to run into Chris. I ran into Chanley Painter today. She's doing well by looks of it. She was very, very busy. I try to run into Chris. I still have not had a chance to run into him or talk to him. So I understand that he is a huge piece of this trial, and I understand he's also going to be blogging about this once a week from my sources, what they tell me. I also understand he's in the courtroom watching this whole thing. I don't think he's going to testify, and I don't think his stuff has been subpoenaed, but there's a lot of talk in the defense's opening argument. He was talking about the podcast, the big deal, like of the podcast. Like it seems to me that his podcast is what actually brought this case to life. It breathed life into this case. Like it was pretty much dead, and then he started his podcast, and it kind of helped piece it all together. So the Smart family is going to testify. According to the prosecution, the entirety of the Smart family, whoever remains living, will be testifying at this trial. So I thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all tomorrow. I'll be tweeting and I'll be live. So I'll see you then.